you beautiful people out there, how y'all doing today? That is fantastic. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Double Diesel Sports Podcast, where we talk everything National Football League, in season, off season. It doesn't matter because it's football. Welcome to the show. I am your host, Double Diesel, and we are here to recap some of the biggest storylines of Week 5 of the National Football League season in the year of our Lord 2022. Before we continue with the show, I would like, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and also share the video. It helps boost my exposure, helps boost the numbers, get it out to more people. If you would do that, that'd be greatly appreciated, if you want to, of course. Also, if you haven't already, go follow me on Twitter at DDS_pod on twitter.com. And also, if you haven't already, go support me on Patreon if you would like to at patreon.com/Double Diesel Sports. There you can get exclusive content such as my weekly picks, weekly predictions, as well as when we get into the off season, you will be able to have access to my draft content in the off season, depending on what tier subscriber you are. Now, I would like you to, but you don't have to. You don't have to do any of those things. Just you taking the time out of your day to watch this makes my world feel that much greater. It makes me feel that special. So thank you very much. And with that being said, let's continue on with the show. And boy, do we have some things to talk about. Crazy week in the NFL yet again. Some of it for just good reasons. Some of it for some bad reasons. Let's just get, the first topic, let's just get it out of the way, because I know everyone's been talking about it. It's been an issue for quite a few years now, but it feels it's been more prominent than ever. I'm, of course, talking about the roughing the passer issue that we have going on. And, up to this point, before the season started, the NFL released a statement around in August or so, right before preseason started, that they were going to make some tweaks to the roughing the passer rule in hope of making it not as common of a call. Because I don't know if you recall last year, they were really flag happy with it last year. And I know that's been kind of lost in the past week, but last year they were calling it a lot. And so the league, granted, took some steps to be like, all right, we're going to try and make some tweaks to it to make sure that it's not called as often. And that was the case for the most part, outside of a really bad call against Josh Allen in the Ravens-Bills game that should not have been flagged. Other than that, it was basically a non-factor in a lot of games this year up to this point. And then Week 5 happened. And a lot of this, I theorize, was probably in response to the Tua injury and how scary that was. And I'm still of the belief that he should not have been in that game to begin with. But this really, I feel like, was all the calls we saw and how bad they were, I thought initially was a response to that. Now, if you, for some reason, still haven't seen them, if you're watching this video, then chances are there's not a chance you haven't. But just in case, let me walk you through some of them, because there was three really bad calls over the weekend. The first one that no one's really talking about is in the Chargers game. Hold on, if I can look up his name real quick. So yeah, there was a play in the Chargers-Browns game, which is a game I'll talk about a little later for a different reason, where a Chargers defender it was after the play it was right when Jacoby Brissett, the Browns quarterback, threw the football, and the Chargers defender came up and just sort of like lightly shoved him. He just sort of shoved him a little bit, and then flag comes out, roughing the passer. And that was sort of the first indication of, come on, man. But that one was nowhere near as egregious as the next two we're going to talk about, and the one that everyone was complaining about, mainly because of the name of the quarterback involved, and as well as the name of the referee involved. I'm, of course, talking about Falcons versus Bucks. where, oh boy, it was a game dominated by Tampa up to the. Let me give some context for it. It was a game dominated by Tampa up until around the fourth quarter. Then all of a sudden, Atlanta started finding their footing offensively. They started making a rally. At one point, it got to a situation late in the fourth quarter where all of a sudden the Bucks were only up 21-15. And the Falcons defense needed to make a stand. They needed to get a stop to get the ball back to their offense in hope of maybe tying the game or taking the lead, etc. And it looked like the Falcons were going to get that chance. Grady Jarrett, as great as he is, was able to get into the backfield, and he was able to get to Tom Brady. He was able to get the sack and turnover. Well, not turnover, but it was a third down stop, fourth down coming up. All right, now we got something. Now we got a chance for Atlanta to go down and do something. They've been on a roll the entire quarter up to that point. Now all of a sudden this is interesting. Except we never got that chance. We never got a chance to see that because for some unbeknownst reason, Jerome Boger himself, not one of his referees and his crew, Jerome Boger himself threw a flag out, and they were deliberating a little bit, and they came out, and there was the phrase, personal foul, roughing the passer. And now I was watching this on Red Zone. I had just started watching this, from my perspective, on Red Zone right after the Patriots game ended. And then I went onto Red Zone, and that was the first thing I saw. So I didn't see the sack live. I just saw the roughing the passer penalty called live. So I watched the replay thinking, all right, well, what does it look like? Did he, throw him down? Did he, hit him in the head? Did he, do anything egregious after the play? Nope. It was just a regular wrap-up sack, regular gator tackle that you do drills in practice all the time. And there was nothing egregious after the play, nothing egregious during it, before it, nothing. It was just a regular sack. And that completely screwed Atlanta over because it gave them an automatic first, 15 yards, and Tampa ran out the clock, and that was the ball game. And a lot of people are saying, of course it's Tom Brady. If this was any other quarterback, then that wouldn't have been called. If this was a mediocre quarterback, this wouldn't have been called. And I was of the belief of that as well. Until we got to Monday night. And this one might actually even be worse. So, Monday night, Raiders-Chiefs in Arrowhead. I think it was a little around 5 minutes to go in the second quarter, if I'm not mistaken. Raiders are moving, and they're up 17-7 at this point. And the Raiders are moving, and Chiefs defensive tackle Chris Jones, who is a monster, who would be the best defensive tackle in the NFL, if not for a certain 99 down in Los Angeles. He makes an incredible, one of the most incredible plays I've ever seen. He not only gets to Derek Carr, he not only hits Derek Carr, but in the process of hitting him, strips him, and then tucks it into his chest while he's sacking him. He hit him, stripped him, recovered it, all in one motion. I've never seen anything like that. It was incredible. And all of a sudden, Kansas City, who just scored a touchdown on the previous drive, now all of a sudden has all the momentum, and it's like, oh boy, here come the Chiefs. Except, flag comes out, and I was watching this, and I was like, there's no way. Like I had that feeling in my gut that they were gonna call it, but I was like, there's no way they're gonna call it. And sure enough, referee says roughing the passer once again, and I'm thinking body weight thing. And then I watched the replay, and Chris Jones, because usually in order to keep the body weight from crushing the quarterback, guys put their hands down on the ground to sort of brace themselves. Well, Chris Jones had one hand braced, and he wasn't able to brace the other because he had the fucking football in his hand. So, and Joe Buck in the broadcast he even said it himself. He was like, "What is the defender supposed to do? Is he supposed to just disappear?" Like, both those plays, Grady Jarrett and Chris Jones, are both plays you look at and you're like, what else is the defender supposed to do? Are they supposed to like sing him a lullaby? Are they supposed to like two-hand touch them? Like what are they supposed to do? It doesn't make sense. And thankfully, it was only in the second half. Kansas City would go on to win that game, but that should never have happened. And the crowd in Arrowhead, they let the refs know that was a terrible fucking call. They were booing them for the rest of the first half and well into the second half. Like, they did not stop booing. Every time, like, it felt like the referees were in that game were one bad call away from everybody in that crowd just starting a riot. And I still can't wrap my mind around it. And it's getting to the point where now, in the case of Grady Jarrett and the Falcons, now it was a thing where it's like, all right, you're protecting the quarterbacks a little too much. Now it's getting to the point where it's costing teams games. And you're putting the fate of games into the hand of referees who, to be frank, don't even understand the call themselves. Because later in that game, in the Chiefs game, after the whole Derek Carr thing that was called roughing the passer, later that game, the Chiefs were driving, they got down into a goal-to-go situation. Patrick Mahomes, and this is why I was like, I thought it was to protect certain quarterbacks, not all quarterbacks. That theory was dashed in this play because Patrick Mahomes, who, you would think would be the most protected quarterback protected man in the NFL, he goes back, he drops back in a goal-to-go situation. Linebacker shoots through, sacks him, not only in the same way that Grady Jarrett sacked Tom Brady the day before, he sacked Mahomes the same exact way, the same exact force that Tua was sacked that caused him to have that scary injury. So that situation happens. No laundry. No substance of yellow anywhere on the field. There's no consistency. It does not make sense. And that goes to show that the referees don't even understand what counts as roughing the passer and what doesn't. Because the rule is written in such a vague way that it's impossible to understand it. And it's getting to the point where it's ruining the sport. And I don't say that lightly. I know that might sound as an overreaction, but it's getting to the point where it's like, it's ruining the sport. It's ruining the enjoyment. Like, after I saw that Grady Jarrett sack, I was upset for the rest of that day, damn near. Because it was such a bad call that it legitimately pissed me off. And the worst part here's the thing. The worst part about all this is that not only did the refs make a bad call, but both times after the game, both referees doubled down on it. Because usually when a bad call is made, the refs, sometimes if it's a really, really bad call, in the case of this, they'll say, hey, yep, I saw it this way, but looking back on it, it wasn't the right call. Hell, the NFL did that themselves a few years ago. Well, we all remember the Rams Saints NFC title game where that pass interference that didn't get called, it was egregious pass interference, didn't get called, and the league said, and the referees themselves came out and said, we screwed up. No. In this case, Jerome Boger, as a matter of fact, I'll read out the statement. I'll read out the transcript. So after the game, after the whole Grady Jarrett thing, the referee in that game, Jerome Boger, was interviewed after the game, and here's how it went. I have the transcript right here. I'll put it on the screen as well. The transcript reads, there was a third down penalty where the Falcons had a roughing the passer called after sacking Tom Brady that extended the drive. Just looking for clarification on what constituted that roughing the passer. Boger proceeded to answer it with, what I had was a defender grab the quarterback while he was still in the pocket and unnecessarily throwing him to the ground. That is what I was making the decision based upon. So the interviewer, who was probably just as confused by that statement as I and you probably are, then asked the play, like he was probably thinking the same thing of, all right, this is probably in response to the Tua thing because it was kind of similar to that. So the interviewer asked, that play was similar to the play that injured Miami's quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. Is that something you have made a specific measure to try and watch out for, the takedowns on the quarterbacks like that? And Boger responds, no, not necessarily. And that is a problem. It doesn't even correlate to the Tua thing in the eyes of Jerome Boger. I'm trying to compose myself here. I really, really am. This has gone too far. I get player safety. I get protecting the quarterbacks. I get not wanting the golden gooses of the league to be out and get injured for a significant period of time. But there's a difference between protecting the quarterback and babying the quarterback. These situations are them babying the quarterback. This is them telling defenders, do not harm them. They're men, but they're also just children. That's basically what it is. Like, you don't harm them, They're just delicate beings that they don't know how to take pain, okay? They're football players. They're grown-ass men, they're football players. They can take a hit every now and then. I'm trying so hard to find the words to fully express how I feel, other than it's getting to the point where, like I said earlier, it's ruining the game, and it needs to be reviewable. At bare minimum, it needs to at least be reviewable. And I know the whole thing of the pass interference play a few years back where pass interference was reviewable. Here's the difference. That one was, coaches had to throw the challenge flag on that, and that slowed the game down tremendously, and it was a waste of time. Here, you don't need to do that. You know why? Because they have this system called the Hawkeye system, where they have the station down in New York where, like if a situation, like you all saw probably watching a game where a fumble happens in a game and you're thinking, yeah, we got a fumble on defense, and then all of a sudden they come back and the offense is still out there, and you're like, why? You know why? Because New York was in the referee's ear to look at that immediately after the play was over and say, no, his knee was down. That wasn't a fumble. Take that off. It's a way to make corrections mid-game and to speed up the process. They do that during fights as well, where if the referee doesn't see who instigated it or who was throwing punches, New York can look at that and be like, all right, this guy threw a punch, this guy started it, this guy was in it, and you could chuck and you can toss them out. All right. Why isn't roughing the passer one of those rules or one of those calls that New York can have a say in? Why isn't pass interference another one? Actually, I don't even know if pass interference is one of them that New York can buzz in and be like, nope, that's the wrong call, pick up the flag. And if it is, then it's really no excuse for roughing the passer to not be one of those things. So that's all I'm saying. It needs to be changed really immediately. They're not going to. I don't know why, but I just hope to the head. I mean, they've already said that the competition committee is going to look at it at the end of the season. But if stuff like this continues where we just keep getting bad call after bad call, then it's something that needs to be made, a change that needs to be made immediately. And I'm hoping to the head, God forbid if something like this happened in the postseason or even the Super Bowl. You imagine if that Grady Jarrett sack happened in the Super Bowl? Oh my God, all hell would have broke loose. All hell would have broke loose. So I hope for the sake of the league that doesn't end up happening, which is why I wish they would just grow a pair of balls and do it and make a change now. But we're not going to get that because, the NFL doesn't like doing things that make sense and all that stuff. But I just wanted to get it out of the way right at the start of the pod. I just wanted to get it out so we can actually talk about some other stuff because it's the thing everyone was talking about. I'm sick of talking about it, honestly, because all it does is just piss me off. And yeah, we're just going to move on after that. We're going to move on to something a little happier, though. And more about a team that has been in the dumps for a while, long while. And now all of a sudden is starting to have a bit of semblance of hope. That team is the New York Football Giants. New York, your football Giants are back. I mean, not entirely, because I don't think they're going to make this like a deep playoff run or anything. I don't think they're that good, at least not right now. But as of right now, the New York Giants are 4-1, man. They're coming off a really impressive win in London on Sunday against the Green Bay Packers. A game where the Packers were up. They were up going into halftime, and the Giants' defense and the Giants as a whole only held the Packers to 2 points the rest of the second half, and that was because the Giants took an intentional safety at the end of the game. So basically, the Packers' only 2 points in the second half of that game were the Giants giving them free points, essentially what it was. But we're not here to talk about the Packers because that's a whole other can of worms. I want to be happy. I want to talk about the Giants because, oh my God, I knew Brian Daboll was good. I loved the Brian Daboll hiring. I thought he was, without a doubt, the best coaching candidate. Everyone was saying Nathaniel Hackett, and I'll talk about that later as well. Everyone was saying guys like Hackett, yada, yada, yada. I was like, no, it's Brian Daboll. Brian Daboll, not just because of what he did in Buffalo, but just the experience he's had coming from the Belichick tree, going everywhere he's been, and being a really damn good coach everywhere he's been, and really being an innovative offensive mind in today's league. I thought the Giants, when they hired him, was like, that is a slam dunk hiring, and that is proving dividends. He has got this team that realistically, like on paper, should be a bottom 5, maybe bottom 10 team in the NFL. And he has them playing like he has them as a competitive football team right now, which you wouldn't think from a team that's still quarterbacked by Daniel Jones. And the thing I love about Brian Daboll and what makes it so impressive of the fact that he's gotten this team to a 4-1 start is that he's taken this offense that still isn't particularly explosive, even with Daboll's system in there, but it's that they actually have some form of an identity in the sense of the thing that made Brian Daboll such a great coaching candidate in Buffalo is his ability to look at the players he has on offense and identify what their strengths are, and then build the offense and build the game plan around their strengths. And what are the strengths of the New York Giants? Our offensive line, Saquon Barkley, and the fact that Daniel Jones' only good quality of him as a quarterback is his athleticism. And they're leaning into that, and they leaned into that in the second half of this game against Green Bay, and they were on a roll, man. They were getting good drives going. They were scoring points. They were all of a sudden, they looked like a functional offense. And like I said, I don't think they're going to be, I mean, if they make it to the playoffs, I'll still be kind of surprised. They might, because of how weak the NFC is this year. But I think even Giants fans will tell you that this team's not going to make a playoff run, at least not this year. And yet, there's still a whole lot of optimism around them because now it's, all right, what happens if we get some more talent around this team? What happens if our best receivers are not a Kenny Golladay who just disappeared after the contract and Darius Slayton? What happens when we actually have, when Evan Neal fully develops? Because he hasn't looked good at the start of his rookie year, but I think he'll get it together. He was too good of a prospect not to. What happens if you do get a real quarterback? What happens if you get some pieces that all of a sudden you can get a Buffalo-style offense? And Brian Daboll has shown that even without those pieces, that they're still winning football games and they're still competitive and they're still a functional offense. And Giants fans, I would be, if I was a Giants fan, I'd be pumped for the future. Like I said, maybe not this year, but they are for sure going to make noise down the road, like a year or two from now. And hell, maybe even by next year, the Giants are a team that you look at and you're like, that can be not only a legitimate playoff team, but maybe even a Super Bowl contender starting next year. Because it's not even just on the offensive side, like on the they got pieces on the defensive side. Xavier McKinney is great. Dexter Lawrence looks like a franchise piece. Kayvon Thibodeau and Azeez Ojulari, those two young edge rushers who are still developing. I mean, they're still really good right now, especially Ojulari in his second year, but those are two really good pass rushers, young pass rushers that they're still developing. And if they hit their ceiling, oh my God. And yeah, this team has a bright future ahead of it. I'm super excited to watch the New York Giants. I will say, like, most people won't like hearing it, but when the New York Giants are good, it's fun to watch. Like, football is fun when the New York Giants are good at football. Like, I know it's a New York team. We all like to clown on New York teams because the big lights and all that stuff, and like they're overrated and stuff like that. But when New York teams are good at the sports they play, it's fun to watch and it makes for a better product. And the New York Giants are one of those examples where, hey, the Giants are competitive, the Giants are good. It's fun. It's a lot of fun to watch, especially considering the team that they currently have and what they could potentially turn the team into with Brian Daboll as the head. It's amazing. I'm excited to see what the future of this team holds. And yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about something fun and upbeat because the rest of this stuff is sort of up and down that I want to talk about. Moving on, I want to talk about some head coaches, or in this case, former head coaches in the NFL after week 5, because a couple of them, and the one that just got fired recently, are coaches that I felt like are legitimately holding teams back. And I've talked about this on the podcast before. One thing that always infuriates me is seeing a team that has talent, that has a future, that has a place to go to, that has aspirations to make playoff runs and maybe even more than that, and they can't reach those because their head coach is actively holding them back. And one of them, like I said, just got fired on Monday, which was a notification that honestly, I never thought I was going to be able to read, that I thought should have been read a long time ago, back in February more specifically. And that is the Carolina Panthers have fired their head coach, Matt Rule, after 5 games. And after 5 games into his 3rd year as Carolina Panthers head coach, honestly, a decision that should have been made, like I said, back in February. If you watch my podcast from last week, I gave my quarterly awards, where I gave out some awards from the first month of the season. And one of those awards was the Dunce of the Month award, which was an award that was given to the biggest idiots of the month in my eyes. And that person I gave to Matt Rule and I started that off with, how in the hell is he still a head coach in the National Football League? He is the definition of a college coach who came to the NFL and was just immediately way over his head. Just to give you some clarification on why Matt Rule was hired in the first place. Matt Rule was a guy who he has historically throughout the college ranks gone to programs and turned them around within a couple of years. His whole thing is, hey, we're going to start out slow, and then we're just going to build a program, build a culture, and then within a couple of years, that's when we start being competitive. It's the whole rebuilding thing. He's done this at Temple. He's done this at Baylor. He's done this at a lot of places in college. And the hope was, when he got to Carolina, that he was going to do the same thing there. The problem is the NFL is much more different than college. Whereas in college, you have a chance to actively recruit players. In the NFL, it's not like that. There's a draft in place. There's free agency. There's a cap that you have to manage. So you can't just go out and recruit any player you want in free agency. You have to make sure that it's within the cap limit and they're going after a player that you're going to be able to afford. You don't have that limitation in college, really. And his first year, it was sort of just a feeling out process in 2020, where it was, all right, it was the same thing that he said it was going to be. It was going to be slow. Year 1 was not going to be particularly good, but you're not expecting to be your good year 1. You're expecting to be competitive come year 2, year 3, year 4, etc. And then hopefully by year 3, that's when you're super competitive. The problem was that the Panthers in 2020, how they played, how they looked, how they were coached, how they were managed, looked like the exact same Panthers team that played week 5 against San Francisco. The whole thing with him was supposed to be, all right, there's supposed to be slow growth over time. We have not seen that growth at all. At all. So it was just this constant dead line of nothingness. There was no life from 2020 to now, and you can see it in the players. They have some talent. I've said this before. They have some talented football players, and they're being wasted by a guy who's pretending to build a program and pretending to build a culture when it's clear as day he has no clue what the hell he was doing. So I didn't think it was going to happen after week 5, I'll be honest, because I thought David Tepper, the owner of the Panthers, I was like, if he hasn't fired him now, he's not going to fire him because after week 5, because I was like, all right, he's probably going to think, all right, well, you're playing against San Francisco. They're one of the best teams in the NFL. I'm going to give you another pass on that. But no, he actually, like I said before, like I told him to do before, he actually grew a pair of balls and fired him the following Monday. And that was a glorious notification to read. And that's the sad thing, is that when I saw that notification, I didn't My thought was, oh, thank God he's finally gone. My thought was not, oh, the Panthers might actually be something potentially now. They might actually have hope now. No, my first thought was, what the hell took them so long? And that's sad. That's really, really sad. Because like I said, this should have happened in February. They should not have gone into the NFL season with Matt Rule as their head coach. Now, Steve Wilks, their offensive coordinator, is going to be the interim head coach for the rest of the season. They also fired their defensive coordinator, Phil Snow. So he's out for the Panthers organization. So yeah, that's all you have there. As far as Matt Rule goes, good riddance, sir. You will not be missed in the NFL. And that's all I have to say about Matt Rule. Now, the other two coaches that I wanted to talk about are really based off of, they still have their jobs, but I'm debating if they should. First, I'm going to talk about Chargers head coach Brandon Staley. I like Brandon Staley. I do. I thought he was a good hire when they first hired him. And, he was a defensive-minded coach. He was the defensive mastermind in Los Angeles. And for the Rams, I should say, actually, because the Chargers are also in Los Angeles. But yeah, I thought he was a good hire when they hired him. And they're competitive with him. Absolutely. Though the defense is not as good as you might have hoped it to be, especially with the pieces they have with, Joey Bosa's out, and he's going to be out for a few weeks. Well, you still have Khalil Mack, you still have Derwin, you still have, Asante Samuel Jr., you still have all these really nice pieces. They should be better defensively than this. But that's not the reason why I wanted to talk about it. The reason I wanted to talk about him is, the whole thing with Nathaniel Hackett in Denver was because after week one, they hired, they hired a game manager coordinator to help them manage the game and manage situational situations to help them impact decisions in that regard. I think Brandon Staley needs to hire one as well. Because, you saw this at the end of last year in the Raiders game in Week 18 last year, where he stupidly called a timeout and it gave the Raiders life, where if they just let the clock run out and take the tie, they would have been in the playoffs. In this situation, I'll explain the situation first before I dive deep into it. So it was a 4th and 2. I think it was a little under 2 minutes to go in the game. Browns, I don't think had any timeouts at this point. But they're in their own territory. It's 4th and 2. And the Browns, they're down 2 points. All they need is a field goal to win the game. But the Browns were able to stop them with under 2 minutes to go. So it's 4th and 2. And, all right, it's easy decision. It is easy decision. There we go. It's an easy decision. Just punt it away and make Jacoby Brissett drive the length of the field and try to get them into field goal range for a rookie kicker in Cade York to kick a game-winning field goal. Instead, and I've been thinking about this a lot, and I still don't understand what the thought process was. He instead goes for it. Remember, they are in their own territory. They go for it on 4th and 2 and don't convert it. So they don't convert the 4th down, and now they give the Browns the football basically already in field goal range. Instead of punting it and making them drive the length of the field to get into field goal range, they instead get the ball in their field goal range. And the Chargers are lucky that Cade York missed the game-winning field goal. But, oh my God. The risk-reward there was... Actually, screw that. There was no reward to be had there. There was zero reward in that situation. It doesn't make sense. Even if they had converted that, it's Why the hell would you even risk that? And I don't. It's to the point where it's like, I feel like the NFL needs to investigate Brandon Staley for gambling. Like, they did it with Calvin Ridley. I want to know, like, is Brandon Staley betting against his own team? Is that what's going on? Like, I don't want to be a conspiracy theory guy, but like, is he betting against his team? Because it feels like he's actively making decisions that's trying to cost them games. Because I don't understand what the thought process was. It's been 3 days since then, and I still don't understand it. Like, I, like, I don't even know what else to say about it because it's just such a stupid decision that I just wanted to talk about because it's like an NFL head coach should not be making stupid ass decisions like that with that little time in that situation under 2 minutes. Browns are the only offense they have is Nick Chubb, and that's it. They have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. That's it. Yeah, they have Amari Cooper, but their quarterback is Jacoby Brissett. So they have, like, their offense is their run game. And so you're going to force Jacoby Brissett to throw the ball and get them in the field goal range to win the game. And that was the stunning thing about this, is that this wasn't even to tie the game. This was a field goal to win the game. They put them in field goal range to win the game. That was the weird, like, that honestly was probably the dumbest decision I've ever made. And honestly, the Chargers deserved to have lost that game, even though they didn't. They should have, and they would have deserved every bit of it. And that's what you get for having a head coach who at times feels like he's playing, it feels like he's coaching against your own team as opposed to coaching you to win the game. And I know that's not his intention, but football's not that complicated of a sport, guys. It's really not. It's not, like, I know it's the ultimate chess game, but like, it's not that complicated of a sport. And Brandon Staley is making the game more, and the strategy of the game more complicated than it actually is. Sometimes the obvious answer is the right answer. So I don't know, man. But that's all I wanted to say about that. I just wanted to speak on that. And there's one more coach I want to talk about real quick before we move on. And that is Zach Taylor. Now, if you were here for my live stream, I live stream every single Sunday night for the Sunday Night Football games. And I live streamed Bengals Ravens this past Sunday night. And the thing about this game is that both offenses didn't look particularly great. They struggled a lot, but the Ravens ended up winning, and a lot of it has to do with Zach Taylor's decision-making late in that game. What I mean by that is, how do I put this? I don't think Zach Taylor's particularly smart. Like, as in, I don't, like, can someone please give me what his GPA in high school was? If that is over a 2, I would be stunned, frankly. Because his situational awareness, like, I was just ripping on Brandon Staley for his situational awareness. This was, oh my God, like, offensive, schematically wise, the Bengals are one of the worst designed offenses in the NFL. And we've known this. We know that the one thing holding the Bengals back is Zach Taylor. And he is a head coach that they're winning with, not winning because of. And when you're a head coach, that's not a good thing. We know that. We knew the Bengals were carrying Zach Taylor. But it's situations like this that confirm in my head that Zach Taylor needs to go, that he is holding this team back. And the situation that confirmed this to me was, it was late in the game. I want to say 10 to 13. I was like 13 to 10, I want to say, in the fourth quarter. Either 16 to 10 or 13 to 10. And the Bengals were down. They get into a goal-to-go situation. They get into a first and goal situation at like the 2-yard line. So they're sitting pretty. And they've been running the ball effectively all night. Joe Mixon was having himself a day. So they run the first play. They pass it. Incomplete. The second play, and this I was floored when I saw it. This play, the second down play, was the Philly special. You all know the Philly special by now. It's the most, by this point though, it's the most predictable goal line trick play you can run. And they run it with Tyler Boyd, who looked like he was trying to pass it. And a Ravens defender came up and wasn't fooled by it whatsoever. I think it was Jason Pierre-Paul. And tackled Tyler Boyd. And remember, this was second and goal at the 1. He tackles Tyler Boyd at like the 14. So now it's going to be a third and goal at the 14-yard line. So now you have to pass to get closer. Instead of running it on first down and doing that stupid shit on second down and having it third and goal at the 1, you now have a third and goal from the 14. They then pass it and they get back down to the 1. And then fourth goal comes up and they're going for it. I like the aggressiveness. It's fourth goal. Why not? And like I said, if it was the same thing that the Ravens should have done the week before, where it's like their same thinking of, if we don't get it, then they're backed up in their own end zone. So this time, they line up in shotgun, not under center, in shotgun, and they run the classic Kansas City shovel pass, where they have the entire line move to one side, the entire offense move to one side, and then Mahomes pitches it underneath to who's usually Travis Kelce, who's cutting underneath behind the line, catches it, and it's usually a walk-in touchdown for them. They try doing that same exact thing here, and the pass falls incomplete. Like, they didn't run the football once, and they started that set of downs as a first and goal from the 1-yard line, and they didn't even think about running the ball once. And not only did they not think about running the football once, they proceeded to run the two, not one of the two, the two most predictable goal line trick plays you can possibly think of. When I say like Zach Taylor is an idiot at times, this is the definition of him being an idiot. Because, and so now all of a sudden, that changed the outcome of the game, because the final score was 19-17. If they had even gotten a field goal out of that, then all of a sudden that final drive of the game where the Ravens had to drive down to get Justin Tucker into field goal range, that would have been a 4-point game by that point, because they eventually got into the end zone. It was 17-16 before that final drive. And had they kicked at least a field goal earlier on that possession, then it would have been 20-16. And now all of a sudden you have to have Lamar drive the length of the field to get into the end zone, instead of just getting Justin Tucker into field goal range, who Justin Tucker is the most automatic kicker in NFL. Like, I confidently say is the best kicker in NFL history, the greatest kicker in NFL history, who, like, just get it past the 50-yard line and you feel confident he's going to make it. And that's exactly what happened. And it's stuff like that where it's just, like I said with the Brandon Staley thing, where it's like, stop overthinking something that doesn't need to be overthought. It's just take the points. And I said on the live stream, I think, that possession, them not getting into the end zone or not getting points out of that, that's going to come back and bite them in the ass. And sure enough, it did. Because had they just settled for a field goal after the third and goal, they would have won the game by 1 point. at least. So I don't know, man. I don't know. It's stuff like that with him and Staley where it's like this team is being held, their teams are being held back because of the incompetence of their head coaches. And they're not going to win anything. Like, those are two teams that have Super Bowl aspirations. They're not going to even sniff those with those guys running the show. They're just not. They're just not, and they never will until somebody else in is different. And yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Yeah, man, they're just I don't know what else to say about that, honestly. They just need better coaching, both those teams, because they're way too talented of teams to have that not be the case. Now, moving on to two teams that are really well coached and are really good, that I did that going into the year I didn't think are going to be this good, especially considering they were both from the NFC East. And those two teams are the Philadelphia Eagles, the undefeated Philadelphia Eagles, and the Dallas Cowboys. I want to talk about the Eagles first because they're the team I've sort of talked about the most, and most about up to this point in the season. They're so freaking good, man. Now, they showed in the Cardinals game that their offense is human. Jalen Hurts is human. They're not this unstoppable force, but they're still a really damn good offense. Jalen Hurts, I'm still unbelievably impressed by his development in year 3. A.J. Brown's been as good as advertised. Devonta Smith has been as good as advertised. Dallas Goedert is a stud. And that offensive line is amazing. They're a 5-0 team. Their defense is also incredible. How I've said this before, but Howie Roseman, I've always said like Howie Roseman has like a love-hate relationship with the city of Philadelphia, where one off season it's like he's loved by the city, another he's hated and wants to get run out of town. But this was an off season where he was back in the good graces of the city because, see what you will about Howie Roseman, that man knows how to put a roster together. Like, the roster he built for this season, it's amazing what he's done. Like, from trading for A.J. Brown, trading for C.J. Gardner-Johnson, signing James Bradbury, cutting Fletcher Cox for cap to make room for the cap, and then bringing him back on a cheaper deal. You know, like, it's signing Jordan Mailata long term, and this team is just so well constructed, and it's showing, man. 5-0, like I said, the only undefeated team left, and they look like a legitimate 5-0 team too. It's not like the Bears last year where they were undefeated through the first like 5 weeks or whatever, like 4 or 5 weeks. But it's like, yeah, but you don't look good doing it. The Eagles look good doing it. And as crazy as it sounds, they might not even be the most favored team coming out of their division, because the Dallas Cowboys, I've been ripping on Mike McCarthy a lot because I thought he was a fraud. But clearly he's doing something right, because this team, like, I thought after Dak went down and Cooper Rush had to step in and be the quarterback for the foreseeable future, I thought this team was going to crawl up into a ball and die, because that first game, even with Dak in a quarterback, they did not look good against Tampa week 1. They actually looked anemic as a team. But ever since then, they've been arguably the best team in the NFC. Cooper Rush has been keeping the offense afloat. Tony Pollard, I don't know why he's not the number 1 back on that team. It's because they paid Zeke all that money a few years ago, but realistically, Tony Pollard should be this team's starting back. He's just straight up the better player. But yeah, Cooper Rush has kept the offense afloat. And another reason why I feel like this is a Super Bowl contending team is that defense. Holy shit, that defense. I'm not going to talk about Micah Parsons that much. I talked about it last week a little bit. He is the definition of a game wrecker. I've never seen an interior linebacker, maybe since Ray Lewis, an interior backer who was that much of a game wrecker. And not just because of his ability as a backer, but just because his ability as a rusher, like a pass rusher, that makes him so scary. He had a groin injury in the Rams game, and you saw it. Like, he was playing on an injured groin and was still getting consistent pressure on Matthew Stafford. Like, it was, and he was groaning all the time. He was holding his groin constantly, like clearly in pain. And yet the ball is snapped and he's still in the backfield every single time he's rushing the passer. It's unbelievable. DeMarcus Lawrence is still as good as ever. The defense as a whole has just been Dan Quinn, he might get head coaching consideration again with how great he's made this defense. Or maybe not, because hey, some guys are just better as coordinators than they are as head coaches. Dan Quinn wasn't that great as a head coach, but as a defensive coordinator, he is phenomenal. He has made this defense into a legitimate Super Bowl caliber defense. And yeah, man. And guess what? The Eagles and Cowboys, they play on Sunday night. I'm live streaming that game once again. Once again, if you would like to join, I live stream every Sunday night on right here on the Double Diesel Sports YouTube channel on youtube.com. And I am so excited for that because I get the feeling that whoever is going to win that game is probably going to end up being the favorite to win the division. And it's a coin flip, man. It's going to be a battle. That Eagles offense against that Cowboys defense, I'm so excited to watch it. I can't wait. I want Sunday to get here already because, oh my God, I can't wait. I'm so pumped. I'm so pumped for it. But yeah, man. And the Cowboys don't even have Dak back. I want to see what they look like once Dak comes back. Because I feel like Cooper Rush, even though, like I said, he's kept the offense afloat, I don't think he's going to give this team that high of a ceiling if he continues to play. That's just me personally. We'll have to wait and see what happens when Dak gets back. And who knows, maybe Dak comes back and he sucks. We have no idea. But as of right now, the NFC East, man, outside of Washington, they have a bright, bright future. If Jalen Hurts keeps developing, which that's a thing, and we live in a world where Jalen Hurts could continue to develop, and all of a sudden within 2-3 years is Josh Allen, that is scary, man. That's scary, but I'm excited for it. It gives us something to be pumped about because we didn't have a lot of expectations coming out of the NFC because we were the AFC is going to be a bloodbath. Who the hell's coming out of the NFC? And now it's all right, it's not just two teams that we didn't think were going to be possible to be in that contendership for the NFC crown. It's two teams that are all of a sudden within 1 year look like completely new teams that we didn't see from the year previous. And it's exciting to watch. Like I said, I can't wait for Sunday night. That's going to be a phenomenal game. I cannot wait for it. But now, I'm going to end the podcast on this. I was delaying it. I know if I didn't talk about it, people were going to be on my head for it. But I have to. Before I go into it, I want to give you guys a little insight onto my day. It'll correlate to this in a second. But I'm not able to do this full time just yet. Not just because I don't have a lot of exposure, but also because I don't have a lot of time on my hands because I currently have work. I work a lot of late. I work late nights, and I don't get back till early in the morning or around midnight or so. And one of the days that's like that on the week is Thursday night. So I'm not able to watch Thursday night games, and I'm like, I'm not going to get a Amazon Prime subscription considering football is going to be the only thing I watch, and I can't even watch it live, so whatever. Well, this past Thursday, it was once again where I was working late, and I got off like around 1 o'clock in the morning, 1:30, and I look at my phone because I knew that there was a Thursday night football game going on, and I looked at my phone, saw the final score, and was horrified. Because the final score of that game was the Indianapolis Colts beating the Denver Broncos in overtime, which is the damnedest thing about all this, 12-9. I saw that final score and I could not believe my eyes. I knew both these teams were struggling. I knew both these teams had terrible problems on the offensive side of the football. But 12-9 in overtime, no less. With the expectations sort of both these teams had coming into the year, you played 68 minutes of football and no touchdown was scored. Not even a defensive touchdown, just no touchdown, period. Let me talk about the Colts first. Let me talk about the Colts because up to this point, this is kind of what I expected from them. I know everyone was hyping about the Colts going into the year. I was not one of those people. I just felt like the Colts were just sort of like a meh team. I felt like the loss in Jacksonville sort of was going to affect them severely, and it has. And I'm just going to talk about Indianapolis real quickly because they did win this game, but they look terrible doing it. Matt Ryan, I think it's time to retire after this year, bro. He doesn't look the same. I expected him to be better than this. He just doesn't look like the same guy we've seen for years in Atlanta. He just looks like a shell of himself. He looks scared. He doesn't look like he's a functional NFL quarterback all of a sudden. And yeah, man, this team, their whole rent-a-quarterback strategy is sort of blown up in their face over the past couple of years. And this is another prime example of that. And yes, and I do believe Frank Reich is on the hot seat because this team had some expectations coming into the year, and they're not even meeting those. So this team, it's not looking great for the Indianapolis Colts for the rest of the season and maybe even going forward, which is a shame because I love Jonathan Taylor. I like Michael Pittman. I love Shaquille Leonard on defense. They have some pieces there, but it's just, I don't know, it's just sort of nothingness right now. It's just sort of, there's no optimism for this team to go anywhere right now. That's what it is right now. But the thing that I've ranted about before, and I don't want to keep ranting about this team. But they give me so many opportunities to do so. What the hell's going on in Denver, man? Like, I don't want to keep doing this. I don't want to keep doing this every single week where I sit here, look into the camera, and ask, what's going on in Denver? I don't want to keep doing this. Like the cynical side of me loves it because it's like, haha, you had all these expectations, you paid all this money, you gave up all these assets for your quarterback, and you're still terrible. Like, a part of me laughs at it, but the other side of me is like, this team should not be this bad in any universe. So it doesn't make sense how, and like the thing is, like, you saw all through the game. I had to go back and watch this. Like, usually I go back on Game Pass and or NFL Plus now, excuse me. It's basically Game Pass. But I usually go back and I just watch the condensed version of the game, which is usually like 35 to 45 minutes. But in this particular instance, I was like, you know what? I want to watch the full 3-hour game. Screw it. Why not? So I watched the full 3-hour game the following morning. And the boos, man. Every time, like, what was it? Like, how many 3 and out? Like, I think there was as many points scored in the first quarter, like as many punts in the first quarter as there was points scored in the first half. It was some crazy like that, and I can't even count. Like, I don't even remember how many 3 and outs there were in that game, but it was a lot. To the point where the crowd was and like, I saw a tweet on Twitter that was like, the Broncos have looked the same as they have for the past 6 years. Why is the crowd booing like this? I'll tell you straight up, because this was not like, you expect this kind of incompetency out of a Paxton Lynch quarterback offense. You expect this incompetency out of a Drew Lock-led offense. You know, like, Trevor Siemian didn't look this particularly good. Paxton Lynch was terrible. Drew Lock was terrible. Teddy Bridgewater was meh. You expect that. The problem is, this was the team that wasn't supposed to be like those other teams. This was an offense that was actually that actually had expectations. That we just kept saying, like, like with Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy not producing, you're like, okay, well, the reason is because they don't have a quarterback, you know? They don't have a actual quarterback to be good. Well, they got that now, presumably. They got Russell Wilson. He's a future Hall of Famer, you know? Like, the guy that, you know, let Russ cook, put Seattle on the map, essentially, or helped put Seattle back on the map. He was the guy that was supposed to unlock this offense of like, all right, now they finally have a quarterback. And it's not only are they still stuck where they've been the past few years, they actually look worse. Like, Brandon Perna of That's Good Sports, one of my favorite YouTubers and diehard Broncos fan, he says, like, and he's went through Paxton Lynch, Drew Lock, etc. He's on record saying this is the worst offense he's ever seen. And this was the offense that had all the expectations coming into this year. And to be this bad, this incompetent, this poorly coached, this poorly managed, this poorly anything, like this, the team as a whole just sucks now. And the one consistent thing of their offense was Javonte Williams. He got injured last week against the Raiders. He's now out for the rest of the year. And now you don't have a single consistent thing on your offense. Jerry Jeudy can't catch a football to save his life. Russ looks broken. Like, everyone's talking about the 2 interceptions that were terrible. Like, what's kind of lost in all of it is that earlier in the game, he had a deep crosser to Jerry Jeudy, and every quarterback knows you got to lead him. You got to lead him closer to the sideline because that is a big gain, and if Jerry Jeudy's able to make a move one-on-one with the safety, he might even have a touchdown on it. Instead, Russ throws it straight down the field, and Jerry Jeudy has to, instead of just running straight to the sideline, has to run straight down the field, stop at a dime and run straight down the field, and thank God it didn't get picked off there. He should have had 3 interceptions on this game. It doesn't make sense. And obviously the 4th down play where KJ Hamler was by himself and Russ didn't even look in his direction because he was eyeing Cortland Sutton the entire time. And he tried to force it in him where it's like, if you just look, KJ Hamler's by himself. He beat his defender by 4 yards. He was by himself. And everyone was saying like, hey, KJ, don't show up your quarterback like that after the game where he was slamming his helmet and being pissed off. It's like, hey, don't show up your quarterback. Me, it's like, no, show him up, because that shit. Russell Wilson, the top 10 quarterback in the NFL, Russell Wilson, he should at least make his, have the wherewithal to at least make his progressions instead of just eyeing, he had made his mind up that he was going to throw that ball to Courtland Sutton on that final play of the game, come hell or high water. And I haven't even talked about the fact that why are you even passing on 4th and 1 in overtime anyway? I haven't even brought that up. Why are you even running the ball out of shotgun anyway? Which brings me to Nathaniel Hackett. He should be fired. And yes, I'm saying that now. I know it's only 5 games into his tenure, but he is clear as day, way over his head. He is in way over his head. And I've talked about Nathaniel Hackett a lot before, where he just looks like he doesn't know what he's doing. He looks like a scared child out there. So does Russ. Russ on the field looks like a scared child, and Nathaniel Hackett looks like a scared child as well. These both look like, and that's the saddest thing. The two guys that everyone was raving about coming into this year, the two big acquisitions, Nathaniel Hackett as head coach and Russell Wilson as quarterback, the two biggest names that they brought in are the two guys that are holding the team back. That's the saddest thing of all about this, because you look at the defense. This is a playoff contending defense. This is a really damn good defense, and they're being wasted by two guys that you wouldn't think were going to be the ones that wasted this team. And everyone's been saying, that the Denver Broncos basically traded 2 future first-round picks, 3 players, and gave $242 million, all for basically a "Let's Ride" slogan. And oh my God, I need to talk about the post-game press conference for Russell Wilson for a second. Because Russell Wilson has always been known as the nice, likable guy. All those years in Seattle where he's sort of you always heard the stories of his dad was sort of teach him how to do post-game press conferences and stuff like that. And you see it. You've seen it throughout his career where, he always has the right thing to say. He always sort of delivers it in a robotic way. But no one ever mentioned, and always having a catchphrase at the end. For years in Seattle, it was "Go Hawks." Win or loss, he would always say "Go Hawks" at the end of it. And no one really mentioned anything about it because the Seahawks fans didn't really bring anything up on it because they drafted him, they developed him, he's been their quarterback for a decade. No one really brought it up. But when you're a new quarterback in a new city, a new team, and with a fan base that isn't familiar with you, and when they hear all offseason, Broncos country, let's ride, Broncos country, let's ride, and let Russ cook and all that stuff, with the expectations they had, which was Super Bowl forget playoffs, they had Super Bowl expectations, and they came into the year with all that stuff. And when you play a game like that, with an offense that has looked as bad consistently throughout the week, this offense has looked terrible through 5 games. Terrible. And this was the worst of them all. In a game that should have been easily winnable. And you come in a post-game press conference looking that bad, and you end it with, "Thanks, everybody. Broncos country, let's ride." As he's leaving the podium. When your fan base hears that, they want you out of town. That is the indication of them saying, "Get the hell out of our city." Because they're going to think, why are you saying that after that game? Why? Why are you saying that? It just comes off like a joke. It comes off phony. It comes off forced. It comes off like he's taking it as a joke. And that's really the definition of this team. This team is a walking joke. This Broncos team is a walking joke. More specifically, the offense is a walking joke. This was supposed to be the best offense they've had in years, and it looks like it's actually the worst offense they've had in years. And it's not even just based on the expectations. It's just objectively looking at it. Trevor Siemian had this team running better than how this team looks right now. Drew Lock has had performances where this offense has looked better than what it has right now. At least that offense was able to put up points under Drew Lock on occasion. This team can't even do that, it seems. Like, I don't know. I'm done talking about it. Please, for the love of God, like, I would not be shocked if it gets to the point where Nathaniel Hackett is fired in the middle of the season. But with Russ, they're stuck with him. And I don't know if he's going to be able to be fixed because like I said, he looks like a broken man. I don't know what happened to him, but something needs to give. Something needs to change. And for the life of me, I don't know what it is. It's, if you fire Nathaniel Hackett, it's like, well, you still have Russ, and is Russ going to look as bad as he has? I don't know. But yeah, I'm going to end it on that because this team just, I'm so sick of talking about it. I'm so sick of talking about them. And until they get it around, it feels like I'm going to continue to have to talk about them until they show me something that makes me not. But that's all for today. That's all. I would be remiss if I didn't bring up that Thursday night horror show. But yeah, that's all, man. It boggles my mind. I feel like I'm gonna it just boggles my mind that a team with that much talent is that bad. But that's all for the show today. Like I said at the start, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Please share the video to help boost the exposure of the show if you enjoy it. Please, if you haven't already, go follow me on Twitter at DDS_pod. As well as, if you would like, go support me on Patreon at patreon.com/Double Diesel Sports. Or you don't have to do any of those things. Just like I said at the beginning of the show, you taking the time out of your day to watch this means the absolute world to me. But with that being said, I will be up tomorrow on Patreon for my weekly picks. I will be here once again on YouTube for Sunday Night Football, Cowboys-Eagles. Like I said, I'm excited for that. And I will be back next Wednesday for a recap of Week 6 of the NFL season next Wednesday for the podcast. But with that being said, I am Double Diesel. Peace.